Frankly, Mr. Brooks, no one is safe from you. This community can only be safe if you are behind bars for the rest of your life. The actions of Darrell Brooks demand punishment. The community is not safe from your violent and criminal conduct unless you are in custody. You left a path of destruction, chaos, death, injury, confusion, and panic as you drove 7 or so blocks through the Christmas parade, never once stopping or seemingly caring about the wake of carnage that you left. 4 of those blocks were turned into a scene that frankly is no different than a war zone. On counts 1 through 6, this court is imposing a life sentence without the possibility or eligibility for extended supervision consecutive to one another. 1 life sentence for Virginia Sorenson. 1 life sentence for Leanna Owen. 1 life sentence for Tamara Durand. 1 life sentence for Jane Kulich. 1 life sentence for Bill Hospel. And 1 life sentence for Jackson Sparks. I've considered the enhancer and the additional 5 years that I could impose, but I don't need to really order that because I've not made him eligible for extended supervision, and it would only be to increase his time on initial confinement. But make no mistake, Mr. Brooks, you use that vehicle as a battering ram, no different than, frankly, a firearm. On counts 7 through 67, these are 61 counts of first-degree recklessly endangering safety. These charges alone and these convictions without the enhancer carry a maximum of 12 and a half years. Because of the enhancer, a total of 17 and a half years. And under Wisconsin law, the 5 years is added to the initial term of confinement. So what could be 7 and a half years is a maximum of 12 and a half years. And I'd ask that everyone no longer show any reaction to the sentence so I can get through this. On counts 7 through 67, on each count, I will impose a total sentence of 17 and a half years. 12 and a half years of initial confinement, plus 5 years of extended supervision, consecutive to any other sentence that I've imposed here today. That is 762 and a half years of initial confinement and 305 years of extended supervision on top of the life sentences that I've imposed. That is 17 and a half years, sir, for Nicole White. 17 and a half years for Eleanor Anders. 17 and a half years for Sasha Catalan Castillo. 17 and a half years for Maura Gilchrist. 17 and a half years for Justin Gullickson. 17 and a half years for Harry Guilfoy. 17 and a half years for Aiden Lofgren. 17 and a half years for Theo Maza. 17 and a half years for Tyler Pudliner. 17 and a half years for Connor Tank. 17 and a half years for Eric Teagues. 17 and a half years for Adelia Maffioli. 17 and a half years for Kelly Graybow. 17 and a half years for Josh Craner. 17 and a half years for Riley Rogers. 17 and a half years for Caden Rogers. 17 and a half years for Tucker Sparks. 17 and a half years for Isabella Bartlett. 17 and a half years for Yaritzi Becerra Montez. 17 and a half years for Samantha Coelho. 17 and a half years for Madison Hollingsworth. 17 and a half years for Mackenzie Hollingsworth. 17 and a half years for Mitchell Lampine. 17 and a half years for Kathleen Pielmeyer. 17 and a half years for Julia Schleichow. 17 and a half years for Olivia Stover. 17 and a half years for Jennifer Stover. 17 and a half years for Jesselyn Torres. 17 and a half years for Alice Urell. 17 and a half years for Charlotte Urell. 17 and a half years for Vivian Urell. 17 and a half years for Grayson Urell. 17 and a half years for Lola Hospel. 17 and a half years for Tamara Rosentrader. 17 and a half years for Betty Strang. 17 and a half years for Maria Alvarez Dominguez. 17 and a half years for Gregoria Romelia Perez. 17 and a half years for Elliot Hallmark. 17 and a half years for Benjamin Hallmark. 17 and a half years for Patrick Heppy. 17 and a half years for Lori Locken. 17 and a half years for Marisol Lopez Gutierrez. 17 and a half years for Adair Lopez Rubelar. 17 and a half years for Juan Marquez. 17 and a half years for David Marquez. 17 and a half years for William Mitchell. 17 and a half years for Jason Petchloff. 17 and a half years for Margaret Pachulis. 17 and a half years for Yamilet Perales Alvarez. 17 and a half years for Island Perales Alvarez. 17 and a half years for Ashley Perales Alvarez. 17 and a half years for Jose Perales Alvarez. 17 and a half years for Maria Perez. 17 and a half years for Camila Perez Gonzalez. 17 and a half years for Isaac Foglia. 17 and a half years for Deborah Ramirez. 17 and a half years for Charles Green. 17 and a half years for Lily Green. 17 and a half years for Brinley Harris. 17 and a half years for Kelsey Knapp. 17 and a half years for Owen Briciotti. On counts 68 through 73, which are the 6 counts of hit and run resulting in death, these are 25-year felonies each. The court will do the following. On count 68, a 25-year total sentence, 15 years of initial confinement, 10 years of extended supervision. This will be concurrent to count 1. Count 69, the same sentence, 25 years total, 15 years of initial confinement, 10 years of extended supervision, concurrent to count 2. Did I say that the right way, the first one? Okay. Count 68 is concurrent to count 1. Count 69 is concurrent to count 2. Count 70, 25 years total, 15 years of initial confinement, 10 years of extended supervision, concurrent to count 3. Count 71, 25 years total, 15 years of initial confinement, 10 years of extended supervision, concurrent to count 4. Count 72, 25-year total, 15 years of initial confinement, 10 years of extended supervision, concurrent to count 5. And on count 73, a 25-year total sentence, 15 years of initial confinement, 10 years of extended supervision, concurrent to count 6. On count 74 and 75, the 2 felony counts of bail jumping, the court is ordering a 6-year sentence total on each count, 3 years of initial confinement, 3 years of extended supervision, consecutive to all other counts but concurrent with one another. And lastly, but certainly not least, the maximum sentence for the battery to Erica Patterson, 9 months consecutive to any other sentence. To order anything other than what I have done, sir, would be to unduly depreciate the seriousness of these offenses. It is needed, although largely symbolic, given the number of years that I have imposed here today, because frankly, you deserve it.